Welcome to the Sounds of Resistance. The waters do not settle in the Ukraine-Russia war, which has occupied the world agenda for a very long time. Thanks to the high-level operations of the Ukrainian heroes in Kherson on the southern front, the Russian army was forced to retreat from this area towards the Dnipro River. Kherson and its surroundings, which are very important for Russia, are now under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. In this region, where very serious conflict took place, the Ukrainian heroes continue their successful operations with the order of the President of Ukraine. The soldiers of the Russian army recently launched a counterattack in Kherson, but the Ukrainian warriors who eliminated this counterattack initiated by the Russians continue to press the Russians. The Russian army, which was stuck in the Dnipro River, contacted the Moscow administration and stated that they had to retreat. The decision from the Russian army was conveyed directly to leader Vladimir Putin. Putin rejected the decision to withdraw Russian troops from Kherson and ordered the attacks to continue. In the Kherson region, the senior Russian general responsible for this decision conveyed to Putin that a prudent withdrawal would cause less casualties to the Russian army. Noting that there is a chance to transport military equipment and save the lives of Russian soldiers by using the Dnipro River, the Russian general reiterated to Putin that if the Ukrainian counterattacks continue, they will perish in Dnipro. Despite all these risks announced by the Russian general, Vladimir Putin gave the order to continue the attacks so that the reputation of his army would not be tarnished. This risky decision by Putin angered both the Russian general in Kherson and other top Russian generals close to the war within the Russian army. Russian leader Vladimir Putin, who sent thousands of Russian soldiers to their deaths in order not to damage his reputation, informed the generals that he would make the strategic decisions regarding the progress of the invasion. After Putin's statement, it was stated that Russian troops retreated to the Dnipro River in Kherson, and according to the claims, these troops turned off the radio in order to ignore the decisions made by the Moscow administration. This event, which shocked Russia, did not only affect the Russian troops in Kherson. After this incident, it became an example for more than 20,000 soldiers in the Russian army to revolt against Putin. Currently, more than 20,000 soldiers and senior officers in the Russian army remain stable, opposing the decision to fight. That is a very serious number. Russian Defense Minister Shoigu recently announced his plan to build up additional troops in Kherson. However, with the dominance of critical logistics routes to the Ukrainian army, the troop concentration plan announced by the Russian Defense Minister has still not been realized. For this reason, the Russian army units in the south remain in a waiting position, completely despairing of the war. The Russian defense minister, on the other hand, claimed that the shipment would take place, albeit late. This decision to increase the number of Russian soldiers in the southern region, which was also approved by leader Vladimir Putin, is expected to be implemented next week, and the Kremlin administration's statements are in this direction. These disagreements between the top Russian generals and leader Vladimir Putin, which deeply affect the agenda, have been going on for the last few months. Russian army generals are by no means happy with Putin's decision that carries serious risks. The approaches of the top Russian generals bring to mind that there may be a coup attempt against Putin. Bringing him to the point of breaking his connection with his army day by day, Vladimir Putin continues to put his soldiers at risk by ignoring the losses in the Russian army. It is said that the Russian leader, who is claimed to be still in a secret palace, did not return because he took precautions against any assassination or coup attempt. While thousands of soldiers wanted to return from the fronts against the war and the mobilization decision in the Russian army, Vladimir Putin's escape to his secret palace caused things to get out of hand in Russia. Opposition groups in the Russian parliament cannot make sense of the Russian leader's escape to his secret palace between Moscow and St. Petersburg near Lake Valdai. This incident, which fueled internal turmoil in Russia, is on the agenda not only of the army and the Russian parliament, but also of the local people. Russian citizens have been organizing anti-mobilization protests day and night lately. Even if those who participated in these actions were taken into custody by the Russian police and legal proceedings are open, Russian citizens do not give up on organizing protests. Russian leader Vladimir Putin is about to cut his ties with the Russian people as a result of the Russian security forces detaining those who participated in the anti-mobilization protests, just as he is at odds with his army. Russian citizens who do not want the mobilization in their country are expected to be sentenced to very serious prison terms for participating in the protests. It is estimated that Russian leader Vladimir Putin will return on Thursday from his secret palace, which he escaped as he continues to get away with both his army and people. When Vladimir Putin returns to office, very serious problems will await him. Because the attitudes of the Russian top generals working in areas close to the war towards Putin have never been this harsh since the beginning of the war. The most feared issue on the Russian agenda is the gathering of Russian senior generals to rise up against leader Putin. The thousands of soldiers currently in the Russian army are fed up with Putin's military command strategies. The Russian leader, who makes wrong and risky decisions every second, no longer wants anyone in the army. Many of the Russian top generals want to plan their own vital decisions on the battlefield. It's not a good sign that the voices are getting louder in the Russian army. In addition, some of the top Russian generals on the battlefield think that holding a so-called referendum on the Ukrainian lands lost by the Russian army will harm Russia. Russian high-ranking generals who find the referendum too risky for the returned Ukrainian lands in the Russian army, where there is no military dispatch facility at the moment, draw attention to the importance of the USA and Western allies in this process. It is expected that the Western allies supporting Ukraine, especially the USA, will increase their military and financial aid to the Ukrainian army if the Russian administration carries out the so-called referendums for the Ukrainian lands from which they have withdrawn. This situation will seriously increase the losses of the Russian army. While all these developments brought Russia into a deep depression, the most feared issue in Russia at the moment is the possibility of a military coup attempt, as the Russian administration's inability to act with its hands tied, its inability to react to the advance of the Ukrainian armed forces, and serious mobilizations in the Russian army. We will see this together in time. The allegations that Russian leader Vladimir Putin fled to his secluded palace because of a revolt against him have not been answered by any officials so far. In Russia, especially in recent times, very strange events are taking place. Bomb developments are expected to happen very soon. The calm period, which is currently passing with uncertainty in Russia, brings to mind the dead silence. Everyone is curious about the response of Russian leader Vladimir Putin to the uprisings against him. We will witness together Putin's steps against these rebellions when he returns from his secret palace. Stay cool for now. Don't forget to follow us.